Let's ask Nikolas, since he's a member of the European Parliament and he watches...
He must say a more optimistic story.
Yes, he may say a more optimistic story, but is the EU ready, this is my question, for a potential exit of the United States from NATO? And is energy really a cohesive point where Europeans can perhaps move on to sectoral integration, as we call it in the past?
I'm also skeptical. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much for hosting this. I'm delighted to meet you here. I'm also skeptical, but also enthusiastic about the potentials. Skeptical because all these critical things that have just analyzed by all of our friends and professors and colleagues. However, I believe that we have to pay a little bit more attention on the notion of security and defense. And as a member of Security and Defense Committee of the European Parliament, I have always argued that defense is not only about weapons. It's about resilience, it's about cohesion and coherence. What I mean is we have an opportunity to strengthen our relations, member states, to go forward, to complete integration, to reform the Treaty of Lisbon and activate tools and clauses that can bring us together and also promote security and defense. That is, for example, clause Article 42, paragraph 7 of the Treaty of Lisbon on mutual defense or mutual assistance. There have been several occasions to activate such clause. For example, the illegal deployment of 6 Jetfires F-16 from Turkey to the occupied territory in Cyprus, which is a power projection and a threat against the member state, Cyprus. So I can see a lot of occasions that can be the means and the tools to accelerate process towards a common defense and security policy. Not only money and not only weapons. There are institutional tools that could lead us to this direction. I believe in a common security and defense policy. However, as I said before, we need to pay attention on steps made over the last 70 years, that is, social and regional cohesion, infrastructure, energy markets, transport, networks and telecommunications. I fully agree with Professor Platias that at the core of security and defense is energy security and security of energy supply. And we have worked hard to diversify. Diversification is at the core of the notion of energy security, which is at the core of the notion of security. If we lose diversification of energy sources, and we don't have energy sources, at least fossil fuels in Europe, we need to import resources, we need to bring resources from abroad, but if we lose diversification, we go back to dependence. And energy dependence means economic dependence, which leads to political dependence as well.
Let's move on to Nikolas to hear an optimistic view.
I would say pragmatic and realist.
Yes, me too.
I try to be realist and enthusiastic.
Nikolas.
Because you cannot do anything else, like Churchill used to say.
However, I fully agree. May I remind you that bilateralism also extends to economic and trade parameters in the era of geoeconomics. And there are some safety valves and safeguards in the European Union, for example, the common commercial policy. There is no such a thing as a bilateral agreement between the United States and every single member state, who either agree or not agree on tariffs together, en bloc, in the European Union. which is a very important element, again, in the era of geoeconomics. Even Meloni in Italy, for example, deviated from the way followed till now because of this parameter, I believe, personally believe. There is another element I would love to touch upon, and is the role that the European Union can play in its neighborhood, and goes beyond the United States' priorities and sensitivities. There is the soft power we enjoy, and here in Greece, even more, in Middle East, in North Africa, in the Balkans, in East Mediterranean. Communities that go back millions of years, communities that feel very close to Europe, European values, European culture, historical ties, and geopolitical priorities, who have been absent. We are not in Syria, we haven't been in Middle East, we haven't been in North Africa, we haven't been anywhere close by. I believe this is the time to act. And not only that, all this protectionism that comes back triggers a much more extrovert Europe. I believe I can see a lot of free trade agreements signed recently. I've been a member of missions and delegations to Philippines, to Peru, from Latin America to Africa, and from Asia to Australia. So this is the time for Europe. That's why I'm optimistic. And protectionism and bilateralism triggers action for the bloc. If we lose this opportunity, there is no way forward, and the European dream will collapse. But now it is the time to act. I feel we are on the same page, absolutely. I can see, however, Greece as integral part of the current bloc of 27 or more member states. And this maximizes definitely our capacities and our soft power. On China, I believe that China plays smarter and much clever than we do think. I was recently in Taiwan as a member of the Security and Defense Committee mission to Taiwan. While the United States sent weapons to Taiwan, China invited the head of opposition to Beijing, and Xi had a full week agenda with a strong lady that may become Prime Minister in Taiwan very soon. You can see how China plays the cards, and the big dilemmas, I fully agree with you, will be between China and the rest.
You have a pessimist and an optimist here.
But dilemmas are not pessimistic.
Everybody.